1 year ago, DJI unveiled its wildly popular Mavic Mini, allowing recreational users an excellent quality drone without requiring a pilot's license. And now they've launched the follow-up, the Mavic Mini 2, with a whole host of improvements. And like we did last time, we lent the Mavic Mini 2 to our friends at Altex Academy to see how it compares to the original Mini, but also how it compares to the other DJI drones. And joining me now from Altex is Yifei Zhao. Yifei, so nice to see you. Tell me, you've had this drone for a few days. What has your experience been like?
Thank you, Dale. Well, obviously, this being the Mini 2, a lot of it is remaining the same from the Mini 1. For example, the weight is still under 250 grams, which means no licensing required as long as you fly safely. What we also have, it's about the same flight time with 31 minutes in, obviously max flight time in ideal condition. It's using the same flight app, which depending on which side of the table you're looking at it, some people call it a simplified version, easier to use for beginners, or some people call it limited if you're looking for more professional use. For the camera side, there is no color profile or log profile as you call it. There is only the ISO and the shutter speed you can change in the manual settings with basically it's got the fixed 2.8, right, for the lens.
And I want to sort of address something right off the top as well that we got last time when we did our Mini 1 video, which was a year ago. A lot of the comments in the comment section said, hey, you guys are talking about like this thing's a toy and it's, that it's not for professional use. And, when we talk about pro drones, we're really talking not really as much the image quality, which is very important, but just what can you do with it? What kind of options do you have? So can you talk a little bit about that?
Right. So it really comes down to what application. You basically explained it really well, right? As we said in the first video, it's never just about the camera quality. That's why it's not a ground camera, it's a drone, right? So it also comes down to flight performance. It also comes down to what kind of situations you can actually handle it. With the Mini 1, obviously, it was on the Wi-Fi with 5.8. So this really brings us to what's the difference between Mini 1 and basically the Mini 2 is on Mini 1, we only have the 2.7K, which really for aerial shots, if it's not stable, if it's windy, you want to have the ability to crop the image or work with that in the video or apply stabilization. So now on the Mini 2, really the big highlights are we've got the 4K now versus only 2.7. Now we still have the same H.264 codec. Also, a big performance on the flight part is really we've got the new controller. So now it's the same as the Mavic Air 2 controller, which means we've got the OcuSync 2 with it, versus for Mini 1, it was just Wi-Fi. So really for the video signal, it's a huge performance, right? Definitely we're seeing huge improvements with the OcuSync 2. On top of that, it's also flight performance because ultimately drone is the vehicle. So the more stable, the better wind handling we have, then the better image you're going to get. So with the flight performance, for example, today we flew both the Mini 1 and Mini 2 side by side. And I would say today's wind was about between 30 to 40 kilometers an hour. And Mini 1 was struggling, as you can see from the screen recording, it's struggling really bad, especially with the headwind. It was almost impossible to even move forward with the Mini 1. And Mini 2, it was cutting through the wind like butter. We're still with the sports mode, we were actually go more than 40 kilometers an hour with the headwind. So it's definitely much better wind handling than the Mini 1. You're also seeing gimbal being a lot more stable. I remember in the first video, we actually shared when you're actually doing slider movements, which was one of the very common movements for drones, right? And you can see the video being very unstable. But on the Mini 2, we're seeing the video definitely being a lot more stable. Now, you still have, obviously horizon drift, but at the end of the day, given the weight of the drone, that's what we're actually living with for the video quality. So ultimately, flight performance is definitely a huge plus comparing to the Mini 1. On the app side, because we're still using the Fly app, so similar features than Mini 1, the added feature now we do have the panorama. So you've got 3 options as the 360, 180, or wide. So it's definitely a nice little add-on in there.
So what can you tell me about the physical attributes of this drone? Like how much has it actually changed over the Mini 1? Are we looking at virtually a carbon copy or what do we see here?
From the look of it, it felt almost the same before obviously you took it for flight. We know that this was under 250 grams, but when we actually put it on a scale, guess what? This was only 240 grams. So I guess they really left room for adding the filter now, because now you can actually add a filter and defilter and still be under 250 grams, where Mavic Mini 1 was exactly on the border, right? Was 249.
Right. And for those who may not be experienced in drone flying or never used a drone before and you're considering this, the reason why we're talking about neutral density, of course, is because, if you don't have those sunglasses effectively for your lens, it's going to fire up your shutter angle, or so your shutter speed. And as a result of that, your image is not going to potentially look as smooth or as cinematic as a result. And so we use this neutral density filters on the larger drones to be able to bring that shutter speed down. And the challenge with the Mini 1 was always the fact that if you're riding the line about its weight and going 1 gram over puts you into the zone where you now have to get a pilot's license, adding a filter is obviously going to change that. But now seeing that there's that 10 gram buffer there really allows us to be able to put on a filter where we potentially couldn't have before and keep our weight down, which I think is awesome, right? I think that makes a huge difference for those people looking for that type of quality.
Now, on that note, let's also talk about the batteries, because at first, I thought definitely this is the first time we're seeing from DJI a new model of the drone that's using the same batteries as Mini 1 as the first model, which never happened with DJI drones in the past. So basically, I thought, great, I don't have to go buy new batteries or additional batteries. I can just use the Mini 1 batteries. But keep in mind, if we use the Mini 1 battery, they're actually heavier, but you also get the less flight time. So just be careful if you choose to use the Mini 1 battery. At that point, your drone may be over 250 grams, and you also get less flight time.
I think we've kind of talked about really the big updates for this drone. If you're really curious and you want to know a little bit more about the whole DJI Mini program, I encourage you guys to watch our very first video that we did a year ago. That will really tell you about where this drone sits in reference to some of DJI's larger drones or some more professional drones. In this video, really, we just intend to kind of give you guys an update and tell you what's new with this one. Now, kind of wrapping up, we've talked about sort of all the major upgrades. What are sort of your overarching feelings about this drone?
I mean, what's not to like with the Mini 2? It's under 250. It does 4K. It's got the OcuSync 2, right? I can't really think of anything I wouldn't like about the unit. It flies great.
Now, in terms of video quality, especially if you're thinking about making some money off of this thing, there are a couple of important things that you probably need to know. One is that it's still an H.264 compression, and it also is about 100 megabits per second data transfer speed. And at 4K, what that's going to mean is that if you're moving really fast and the scene is changing quite a bit, you're going to end up with a lot of compression noise. And we saw this with the Mini 1 originally. But if you're really up high or you're going really, really slow and the image isn't changing too much, you're not going to see as much or really any compression noise. So you're limited somewhat in how good the image is going to look based on what you want to be able to do with it. But if you kind of work within those constraints, the image looks amazing. And that's where professional drones will open this up for you, that you can move fast with the professional drones, and the transfer rate and the data rate is really, really good. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, ultimately, right, if we're going to get almost geeky about this, is how come the 4K on the Mavic Mini 2 is not the 4K on the Mavic 2 Pro, and that's not the 4K on Inspire 2, right? Correct. Ultimately, that 4K and your 4K and my 4K are not going to be the same, because it may be the sensor size, which obviously on the Mini 2, it's a smaller sensor size, which you have less resolution. It could be high compression rate, right? We don't have the color or log profile like what we have on the Mavic 2. There may be over sharpening that's basically apply to your video. So ultimately, the level of details and how the ultimate video end up looking is going to be different. Ultimately, what you're looking at is the professional drone versus, entry-level unit is what kind of scenario they can actually deliver your footage, right? You don't always get perfect, nice, sunny days, no wind, right? A lot of situations you're being thrown in. It could be high wind. It could be, even different situations. It could be that the shot they want, you need to fly at high speed, which makes it difficult to actually capture those nice, smooth videos. So ultimately, is what scenario you're using it for. Obviously, with the Mini 2, I personally find it's great if I have to fly, let's say, a little bit outside of what we call the regulation rules that applies to drones above 250 grams, right? Obviously, there's a risk level of calculation. But with the Mini 2 at only 250 grams, even when we go for, let's say, location scouting or tech scouting for a project, a lot of times, I always say, hey, let us file flight planning if you're going to be in controlled airspace. We're going to bring a unit so at least you can see the framing. You can see right away whether or not location works. But that isn't always the case, right? So it's nice having Mini 2. You get to a location that you didn't plan for it, and director says, look, that's a great location. Would it be nice for aerial shot? And you didn't file flight planning ahead of time. So at least you're able to send the drone up, get a shot, see if it actually works for the project. And that's going to save you hours when you go out to do your actual primary film day, right? So again, to me, it's just tools are tools. It comes down to understanding limitations and what you decide to use it.
Thank you guys so much. Any last words, Yifei, before we close her up?
This is obviously only the first impression video for the Mini 2, so I'm really looking forward, again, just to take it flight more and share more of the flight performance and share more of the videos with you.
Yeah, great. So we'll make sure that our audience follows you online as well. Links are in the description below for Altex Academy. And thank you guys so much to Yifei and Alex, your colleague, for taking the drone for a few days and telling us everything you love about it. Take care.
Thanks for having us, Dale.
And that's it for today, guys. Thanks so much for watching. As always, please subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. And, comment in the comment section below because it helps the algorithm. I'm done. I gotta fly. Peace.